So obviously, Josef Gingold was loved. I mean, who would have thought that someone would gather all those young violinists to play Happy Birthday for him if he wasn't? But what about other teachers? What did they think of him? Well, Gingold headed the chamber music program at Galamian's Meadowmount. But how did that happen? Well, it seems that when Gingold first came to Meadowmount, he was there to check up on his prized pupil at the time, a young teenager from Bolivia named Jaime Laredo. But Galamian engaged him in a vigorous conversation about teaching theories, and the conversation ended with Galamian offering Gingold a teaching position. I think this says a lot about what Galamian thought of him. But how did a boy from Brest-Litovsk end up here? Well, it begins when Gingold, who was at the time 3 years old, pried open his brother's violin case and, as he puts it, scratched out some notes, which wasn't bad for a 3-year-old. Soon after, his father brought a little violin home from Warsaw, and at 4 years old, he was thrilled. When he asked what made it play, his father said a little man inside danced when you drew the bow. So naturally, he cracked it open to find him. His father, who had never yelled, was furious, but his mother just laughed. He just wants to see the little man. Then the First World War broke out, and suddenly the family was given 24 hours to leave the city. That began weeks of walking, weeks of hunger. They arrived in the German-occupied town of Prusiana, and his father and brother were put to work, receiving food rations that were minimal at best. It was here that he ended up playing the violin for soldiers that eventually paid him with a few bags of food, which was shared with the others in the community, but in 5 minutes, all the food was gone. A few years after the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was signed, they left for the U.S. and settled in New York. There, Gingold began violin lessons at the music school settlement with Melzar Shafi, who recognized the boy needed stronger guidance and recommended him to Vladimir Grafman, who had been a student of Leopold Auer. But after 5 years of study, Gingold and his mother set sail for Brussels, so he could study with Eugene Ysaÿe. According to Gingold, he was wonderful, but he used to refer to the violin as a feminine instrument. He'd say things like, "She doesn't sound well today. She's sick." So one day Gingold asked Ysaÿe, "Why do you refer to the violin as a feminine instrument?" Ysaÿe replied, "Because it takes a man to master it." Gingold mused, "If I had said that, they would have had placards outside, boycotting my studio." So 2.5 years later, they returned to the U.S., but it was during the Depression. He managed to find work, however, as a member of a walking fiddle corporation and played at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. His first steady job was as assistant concertmaster for a Jerome Kern production on Broadway, The Cat and the Fiddle. He then won a position in the newly formed NBC Symphony Orchestra under Arturo Toscanini, and became a founding member of the Primrose String Quartet, as well as a member of the NBC String Quartet and the NBC Trio. Later, he was concertmaster of the Detroit Symphony Orchestra until George Zell offered him the same post with the Cleveland Orchestra, which he accepted. During those Cleveland years, his work at Case Western Reserve University and the Cleveland Music School settlement built his reputation, and he went on to join the faculty at Indiana University, where he was later named Distinguished Professor of Music. But when asked by Kim Markle why he decided to teach, he said that his grandfather was a very well-known rabbi who stressed education more than anything in the world. When asked if he had a system, he said, "I don't have a system. There are systems for producing a can of Coca-Cola. I mean, this isn't the system for me. It's all systematized. You're dealing with a human being when you're teaching. No two human beings are alike. Like fingerprints, there are no two sets of fingerprints that are the same. So you try to see what is the need mainly for this person. You might give a certain fingering to one person, and it doesn't work at all. For another person, it's medicine. For another one, it's poison. That can happen. He continued by saying, and then you see a person developing beautifully, and they've reached a stage where they have some ideas. Let's hear them. Why not? My word is not holy. Then I see something coming out of the violin that is so beautiful. Keep it. Encourage that. Try to get it out of the person. To me, that's teaching with a sense of humanity and a sense of beautiful music making. Well, it's this kind of teaching that produced Joshua Bell, Jaime Laredo, Leonidas Kavakos, Miriam Fried, Joseph Silverstein, Philip Setzer, and so many others. After the death of his wife, Gladys Anderson, Gingold donated all his private teaching fees to a scholarship for gifted violin students set up in her memory. Teaching, in his own words, was a blessed service, a mitzvah.